everybody. I'm Jane.
And I'm Sarah.
And you're listening to the Medium Curious podcast, the show that wonders if the sound of spirit is in fact the sound of silence.
Oh. That's so good. Today we have on Chuck Rosenthal. She's the founder of the Logos Method, and she's here to talk to us about how important it is for us to be aware of our parasympathetic nervous system. I said it, Jane.
Good job, Sarah.
And how that actually helps us with our intuition.
It's an amazing conversation. And really quick, I want to say that yesterday we had a sound bath with her. So as we start the conversation, you'll hear us referencing this amazing experience we happened yesterday. So ready, team?
Let's go.
Let's go. Wow. Chuck, welcome to Medium Curious.
Hi, I'm so happy to be here.
We're so happy to have you here. Sarah, you're just now meeting Chuck for the first time. No, that's a lie.
No, that's a lie. We had the best afternoon yesterday, and we got to see you at work while we were lying in the woods, getting bathed in gorgeous sound. So that's why we have you here today.
Mm-hmm.
We want you to talk about nervous systems, how to take care of them, why it's important, how it's important to our intuition, and what you do. Because it's so beautiful. And we got to experience that yesterday.
1, 2, 3, go.
All right, wonderful. I like to tell people that I use sound as a tool to help people have a relationship with their nervous system. Because we take our nervous system for granted, right? Just like a lot of times we take our body and so many other aspects of our human self for granted. And so the nervous system has become this kind of, hot topic these days, right? And the parasympathetic nervous system, the sympathetic nervous system, I'll explain what they are. The vagus nerve, all these different terms that people are using to talk about the nervous system, but nobody's really describing, like, why do we have a relationship with it and what does it really mean? So our sympathetic nervous system is that place of fight or flight. It's
so weirdly named, huh?
Right?
Yeah.
And yet it's what we're all so familiar with.
Right. Yeah.
The parasympathetic nervous system is that place of rest and digest. It's that place where we can find peace and calm, right? The air gets let out of the balloon. I like what you said earlier, which is, it's like a parachute, and saves us from our, reactive self, because that's what it is. When we're in our sympathetic nervous system, we are in reaction mode. And so much of that reaction mode is historical. It's stuff we don't remember, that we might never remember. I mean, therapy is such a good tool to help us to get to understand and process some of the unprocessed feelings. But we'll never remember that time when we were an infant and no one picked us up when we were crying and something was made up inside of our nervous system about not feeling safe, not being taken care of. Like all these things, all these experiences as we're growing up, the last one picked on the softball team, whatever happened to you as a child that we didn't, especially when I was growing up and so many other generations, we weren't taught to process those feelings. We were taught to just like, come on, get tough, move on, right?
Yeah.
Tough up. And so all those things end up being constrictions somewhere in our physical bodies. What I studied more of is the brain, trauma, and the nervous system. Now, I'm not an expert on those things, but I took enough workshops to understand that what our nervous system really wants is to find deep peace, is to learn what silence is about. Because silence is not a familiar sound. And a lot of times, we actually, in trauma, people that are in trauma, they keep their minds active and busy because it keeps them from having to feel what's underneath there.
Yeah.
And the place of being able to figure out how to get to the thinnest slice of now, that silence in between the thoughts, is kind of like, to me, the magic recipe of learning to build a relationship with our intuition. Because when we're in it, you want to say something, Jane?
Always.
Okay, go.
No, I just kind of wanted to discern. So, in your estimation, the nervous system, the parasympathetic version of the nervous system, allows for your intuition because what? There's more spaciousness, or
Well, we're
just help
relaxed.
us understand. Okay.
Yeah, so we're in rest and digest, right? We're in this place of peace and calm,
Yeah.
right? So I'm hoping yesterday in the session, your mind got to stillness, right? And when you're in stillness and receiving these medicinal vibrations, our bodies cohere to that. They want to match that vibration. And so our body's intelligence is that it's actually our natural state of being to be in rest and digest. And then to, answer from the heart. That's another thing. To me, being in parasympathetic and also doing somatic experience stuff assists you to learn to listen more from our heart than our heads, right? We live in a world where our heads have been driving.
They've been given the right to rule.
The right to rule. Well,
Yeah.
Right? Because we haven't been taught, I've said this for decades now, no one taught us how to be human beings. They taught us how to be human doings.
That's right.
We have to do in order to feed ourselves, house ourselves, and all sorts of stuff, right? And now we're in this really challenging place in the world where there's so much inequality and disparity, right? And we're facing the us versus them, like the other is bigger than ever. And so I believe part of the reason we're in that place is because we never learned how to really be human beings. And if we lived from our hearts versus our heads, we wouldn't allow hunger. Being a billionaire would not be the goal for every human being. It would be helping each other.
Yeah. This morning I was headed out to something that felt super stressful to me. And I'm staying with a friend who's super versed in all of this. She's very wise. And I said, I think I'm supposed to carry myself like this. And she goes, okay, try it on. And so I showed her, like, this is how I'm going to carry myself. And she was like, okay, you could do that. And then she goes, or you could go with an open heart. And I was like, ugh. But I did it. Like, I sort of showed her. I was like, okay, this is me with an open heart. And she was like, yay, you're so cute and fabulous. And I was like, I like being cute and fabulous, but it's foreign. And tears sprung to my eyes. That's all.
What it requires is that vulnerability.
Yes.
And so to take it back to being in your I'll never be able to say this, parasympathetic nervous system.
Yeah, you got it.
You have to feel safe. You have to feel like you're not in danger. You're not in survival mode in order to have that open heart, to have that feeling of it's safe to be vulnerable, to live from your heart space. So that's I hope you went in there with your open heart.
I think I did. It was the effort. It was the attempt anyway. But that's when you're it's sort of like when you're a gift is when you come in like that. Because if you come in with the defenses, that's what's going to arise in other people. Because we have these, mirror neurons. And so they would have been like, oh, look, a defensive human. I'm going to do that too.
I mean, it's interesting because I feel like I know these things on a certain level, but I've just never heard them defined in such a way, which is really interesting and cool. So to actually experience that sitting or lying down in the woods yesterday, having this space, it was an intentional space because I think that has a lot to do with it too. We were there with the intent to give ourselves the gift of relaxation, of peace, of setting this intention to come into this state through your gift of what you provided for us. And I think that's part of it too. It's like you have to want it, and being aware of that is also part of the part of it too. That's important.
Yeah.
And I'll just add one more thing before we jump back to you, Chuck. The thing that's really interesting to me, and I haven't been to too many other sound baths outside of yours, but I think when people hear sound bath, it just sounds kind of oovy groovy and not necessarily like you'd have to be wearing patchouli to go or something. Do you know what I mean? But what I loved about the event yesterday was all the really unique and different people that arrived and with warm sleeping bags laid on the ground. And then also like your scientific perspective. And that's always really been fascinating to me because you gave this beautiful talk at the beginning that explained a lot of what you've already started to explain to all of us. And I was like, oh, okay, so I'm going to engage my left brain. I'm going to get the science, and then I'm going to attempt to come over to this parasympathetic nervous system. I'm just showing off, Sarah.
You can say it, I cannot.
That's great. Yeah, and it's funny because last month I had a woman there, and after she goes, I kind of just came here for a sound bath, and you kind of talk a little too much at the front. And I said, I understand. And for me, I feel that I'm not just doing sound baths. And actually, I usually I call mine sound journeys, because to me, it's really a journey within. And sound baths are like this cliche thing. And I know people that sing harmony stuff and they call it a sound bath, right? Like, like it's just become this catch and catchphrase. And so I feel that, I've been to a lot of different sound baths now, and they are all so different. Why I do the education part is that we need to be educated. And if I can set everybody up to really know, you're going to use your ears as a bridge to feel, because we usually use our ears as a bridge to think. And I want people to bypass their mind. I want you to leave your mind behind and just allow the ears to be a bridge to feel. Now, we do this all the time in everyday life, right? Someone says something with a tone of voice, we feel that, right?
Yeah.
So we're already doing it, but we're doing it through our brain, which is, full of historical responses and defenses and all that kind of stuff. And
Chuck, you have the Logos method. Can you tell everybody what that means, Logos?
So Logos is there's many definitions. The definition I adhere to is the animating principle pervading the universe. And I'm glad you brought that up, because that's where I thought we should go next, right? Is like back into what you guys are about, mediuming. Did I say that right? Mediuming.
Perfect. Correct.
This humaning is mediuming. And so how do we, stay connected to and open up? I was talking to you yesterday, Sarah, about, I don't have the experience of seeing the way you do, but I feel like my life is full of being connected and full of magic and triple plays and, all.
Rathke triple play.
Yeah. We're just like, things show up, people show up, experiences happen that feel, I like to say magical, but that's just like, wow. Right. And so being connected to higher power, to the animating principle pervading the universe. The reason I like that is I don't like God. It's just that word has just been misused and abused. It's not a he, it's not something in the sky. And I like higher power. I like the divine. And I love animating principle pervading the universe, because it's just mysterious and unknowing, right?
It's a little bit like our old life too.
Yeah.
But just really quick sidebar, Chuck and I used to work together closely when we were in the film business. And so I was just thinking about all the animation projects we made together. So now you're talking about the animating principle of the universe.
Yeah.
Someone said to me, "Hey, I'm going to have a meeting about AI." And I was like, "Uh-huh." I was like, "I'd rather have a meeting about II, the infinite intelligence, because the artificial stuff doesn't sound as fun."
Yeah.
So anyway, please go on. So your Logos method.
Yeah. So that's, my dream is to get people in touch with that.
Mhm.
To, through this work is for you to have an experience, for you to have a relationship with the animating principle pervading the universe, that it becomes more of our natural state of being. And I think, 144th monkey, we do this, we'll see more change in the world that's empathetic and heartfelt and less othering. And yeah.
Wait, can you explain the 144th monkey? I know what you're talking about, but I just recently read this.
I know there's like studies of like one monkey on one island doing something, and then a monkey somewhere really far away does the same behavior, right?
Which is like a revolutionary behavior, like washing their food in this particular way or something, right?
Yeah,
Like it was something like that.
There's stories like that.
I just, speaking of AI, just read something where somebody asked AI to give the definition of interconnectedness, and AI gave the definition being quantumly that we're all related beyond what we know, the interconnectedness between everything, and that when we even have a feeling, it affects somebody else. It affects the whole.
Yeah.
And that was a definition given by AI.
Wow.
Yeah.
I love that.
Isn't that wild?
I love that. Well, so you stretch the rubber band. AI, if you go back to the beginning, whenever that was, there's a lot of people who've been studying Egypt. How did those pyramids get built? Pyramids on this continent and other continents have the same circumference and base. Like, there's like all these, sacred geometry things that match the pyramids throughout the lands, right? And apparently before, continents shifted, they were like in an alignment and considered to be the chakras of the planet.
Wow.
And so they found what they believed to be sound chambers in Egypt underneath the pyramid.
Wow.
And they believed that when water ran a certain way, it created some type of a sound and vibration. And this is the premise, right? Nobody really knows, but I heard it. I'm like, yeah, I'm game. Which is, imagine, right? Like the way our brains are developed are very different the way brains were developed then.
Oh, yeah.
And they've also found petroglyphs in different pyramids that are the same, that represent like the Tesla symbol and this other symbol that other symbols that they believe are talking about sound and vibration. And that possibly these people were able to teleport, right? Like,
oh yeah,
it's like a fascinating and expand the rubber band thing, but we are so far from that in our being because our brains have developed in the way they have.
Yeah. But I think as more and more of us start to model what it looks like to live from your intuition and your heart, I think, the 144 monkeys,
Yeah. One thing I think is beautiful is we're finally living in a society where people are learning that it's okay to process and have your feelings now, right? That we're not being told, be quiet, shut up, sit down, spoken to, right? At least I think there's a movement towards that, right? And so it is important that when you have feelings that you do process them. You don't just go right to, I'm going to own myself out of this. We're not sophisticated enough to process feelings if we just ohm them out, we just push those feelings down. So it's important to have the feelings, process them.
Do you think that your nervous system then clues you in to what's going on with you? Like, what are some of the things to look for in your nervous system? Like, what are some of the red flags? I mean, we know when we're in fight or flight, but sometimes I think there's a lot of people, especially for us sensitive people, we don't really know when our nervous systems are fried or when we're dysregulated, and we tend to do to get ourselves to feel safe, or people freeze, or there's any number of ways that
collapse.
Yeah,
that's my move.
So you just described some right there. For me, the one thing I didn't really realize was how much of my life I spent living in adrenaline.
Yeah.
And I think adrenaline is definitely one way, right? And my wife notices it in me. If I'm in it immediately, I can see you're in your adrenaline, you might want to, like, I know I'm late and I'm trying to run out the door and I just got to spend the next 5 minutes and then I'll take a deep breath, right? So sometimes there's purpose for it, but if we live in it, right? Anxiety, if we're having anxiety about something, our nervous system is absolutely on fire. If we are in fear about something, right? The fear is telling us, okay, slow down. What are we afraid of? So much of the time when we start to just process and let out the emotions that is underneath the fear, it disappears. One of my teachers years ago said, face your fear and it disappears. Not always, but fear is kind of a big one. And, just disassociating when you're not really present, you're just in action. You're just kind of like not really present in the moment. I think I've heard you guys talk about being present in the moment, how important it is. And that's what all this comes back to, right? If we get into our parasympathetic nervous system and we're really present in this moment right here, back to our natural state of being. And so what does that really mean? It means that there's now an opening to silence. And what's on the other end of silence is our intuition. Because you can't hear your intuition if your mind is always going, you're staying busy and active in fight or flight. But when you're in the here and now, and you experience how delicious silence is, the words come through the way they're supposed to. The doors that are supposed to open, you can see the doorknob when you walk into an area and there's something going on that's like gonna assist you on your path. And we sharpen our intuition. And sharpening our intuition is that connection to the divine. That's where we hear spirit. That's where we hear purpose, life purpose. Since a lot of us are living for survival, we're not living in our life purpose. Another reason why the planet is so messed up now. So I was listening to your last episode. I forget the name of the woman. She's got her own platform. She was really
Sally.
great.
Sally.
She goes, what comes first, the chicken or the egg? And I was like, okay, are you guys ready?
You're going to tell us.
Yay. You're going to answer it.
I'm going to answer her question. We'll see. I've, my whole life, I'm Jewish. I never did anything Jewish practically in my whole life except Passover or go to a bat mitzvah, eat matzah. I do love matzah brei, I just have to say. And so I went to a sound healing conference back when I was first learning about all this. And on Sunday morning, there was a rabbi speaking. And he was talking about the tree of life and the Kabbalah. And I'm like, what the heck is a rabbi doing at a sound healing conference? There's nothing else I wanted to see in that time slot. So I went. And I'm sitting there listening to this guy speak. And at this point, like literally, I'm in the process of developing the Logos method. I have a teacher that I used to go to Sweat Lodge with, who had been helping me quite a bit. He's a wonderful man and still a mentor. And so I had him as a teacher, but I was like, I need somebody new. And I'm sitting there in the audience going, oh my God, my next teacher is going to be a rabbi. He's on my altar. This is Rabbi Fizdle.
Oh,
cool.
I go up to him afterwards and I say, do you see people one-on-one? Yes, I do. Okay. So I ask, see him. I show up for my hour-long session. We're talking to see if we're a match. I look at my phone. I go, Rabbi, I think we should stop. What time is it? 2:30. We started at noon. He goes, well, let me finish this story. And that's how my Tuesdays with Rabbi Fizdle went. And so I got so much from him. And I can feel all the emotions coming up because when he told me this story, I cried like a baby. Mm-hmm. And, I've heard so many times from different traditions talk about there's life after death and, right, this is our soul suit and all that. But when he told me that it's in the Kabbalah, that this is where we come to experience the third dimension, this is where we come to work it out. And so before we get here, we choose the lessons we're going to learn. We choose a purpose and what it is we're going to do to give back to the world. In the Jewish tradition, it's called Tikkun Olam. In the Indian tradition, it's called Seva. And so we've forgotten that. And we haven't been living by it. So the world's a mess. And I'm like, why don't we know this? Why is this hidden? Wouldn't the world be such a different place? So jerking a tear, but I seriously laid on this couch and cried like a baby. I couldn't believe that that's in the original text.
Wow. I thought it was just in the Marianne Williamson text.
I know, right? Me too. It's just like
this is all the brand new news. You know what we all need to do. And meanwhile, it's like ancient wisdom. It's like, P.S. kids.
Yeah. And it just makes sense because if you come here lifetime after lifetime, and that's, the Tree of Life is about our evolution, right? And which was cool too, because I'm like, oh my God, I get it. So I might be on the fourth rung and someone else is on the first. And now I understand why when I talk, they can't understand what I'm saying. Like, you ever do that? You talk to someone and they're just like, this, they're like, huh. I used to get that a lot more, right? Like in the 80s and 90s when I started to wake up and people were just like, you're crazy, like, what are you thinking?
Yeah.
And then stuff started to it's normalized now. It's, it's great. I'm so thrilled to be living at this time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, okay, but just one more time, because this is how I learn, is like in threes. So sympathetic is sort of unfortunately the norm, but it's not the norm. Sympathetic is kind of run and gun, have your coffee, eat your food while you drive, like go, 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 go. And parasympathetic is rest and digest. It's that peaceful feeling. It's what we get in meditation. It's what we get in a beautiful sound bath and the Golden Gate Park with Chuck at the wheel. It's what we get most likely if we're intentional about it. But can you also share, I can kind of see it and feel it. Like, I know the difference-ish. But I think Sarah was asking about that. Is there a watch out? Like your wife is like, I see your adrenaline. Are you sure you want to be there? Which is great. But are there other kind of I don't know, somatic things? Like, I was just thinking my jaw probably clenches or stomach clenches.
Oh, sure. Absolutely. Yeah. Why don't you tell me what you think it is for you? Because it's different for each of us. But you just you definitely hit some.
Yeah. I mean, I think what's part of why I'm trying to like pull this apart again is because it's so normal that that I'd be hard pressed to be like, well, that's how I live. That's my whole life. You know, my stomach is in a knot. My jaw is clenched. I'm tired. I have a headache. But I do have a meditation practice, and so I do understand parasympathetic, but I also have a meditation practice where my brain goes too. So
Yeah.
anyway, it feels slightly fuzzy, but that's my guess is that sympathetic is, that sort of tunnel vision feeling.
Yeah. When I'm in parasympathetic, let me try and give you some examples of what that feels like to me. I'm relaxed.
I like that it starts with the breath.
Mm-hmm.
It
Yeah.
always starts with the breath.
Yeah. And that exercise I taught you guys, right? Helps me
Will you
get
talk
there.
about that
Yeah.
exercise?
Yeah, I'll come back to it. And so, see, I don't need to have an answer. I'm more in trust and faith.
Mm.
I know that when I show up in every moment, that it's going to be okay. Now, I used to live with self-sabotage right here, all the time. When's the bottom going to fall out? And, used to be asked to take a job and I'd feel it in my gut and I'd be like, oh, I just said yes, but I really don't want that job. And, find someone to replace myself. I never did that with you, Jane. And, and, like you feel it in the body, but back to like what the centering, I've had so many sound journeys now. And when I used to do them one-on-one and do 2 or 3 a day, I was just like, like you just feel present and calm and there is silence. My mind does not always tick off anymore.
So you're really making the case for being in that state of trusting and surrender, because when you are, and you're not in that state of worry where your nervous system is revved up and dysregulated, you're making the case that to be in that peaceful state, that's when you're the most service with. That's when you're in the flow. That's when you're able to access your intuition. And therefore, the best outcome possible is there, as opposed to the other side of it, where you're hanging on so tightly, so worried because you feel like you're actually doing something to help your cause. Because I've been in both states.
Mm-hmm.
But it is that, like, how do you surrender? How do you trust? And it is just letting go and being in that peaceful state.
Yeah, and that's why I say I want to teach people to have a relationship with their nervous system. I want you to learn to become aware. Oh, I'm anxious right now.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, maybe you have a reason to be anxious, right? Like, I don't feel like fear is always a bad thing. Wow, that car could have hit me. Like our ego is there to protect us, but that's not how we use it most of the time. So it's becoming aware of that, in my adrenaline, because I'm on a deadline and this is important to me, right? But you can also approach that I'm on a deadline, this is important to me, and I'm chill about it. Like, I got this. I know I do, right? But notice those things. Like, really have a relationship with your mind, how it feels in your body, and be at choice with how you're going to be about it. When you do somatic experiences and parasympathetic becomes more of your natural state of being, because I have clients, thank God, that inform me about the work. And I have clients that come every month now. I've had clients that come used to come twice a month when I had private practice. And the more consistently you do something like this, the stronger the imprint, the stronger your bookmark, your reference point becomes, which has made it more of my natural state of being. This is not how I used to be. Like, this has been a work in progress. Yeah.
I loved yesterday, and I don't know how long it was. It felt like 20 minutes to me, but it was probably more like, do you know how long it was? The sound bath?
An hour.
It was an hour. It was so at the end of the hour, which went by just like that for me. You spoke, and it was so soft and so gentle, and you said, "Okay, remember this. Bookmark this so that you know how to get back to this." And that just made me smile. I was just like, "Oh, yeah." I definitely want to take this with me. It's so good. Now that I know what it feels like, I want to be here. I want to carry this around all the time.
Yeah.
Yeah, Control C.
Control B.
Yeah, Control V right on top of you. How do we template that? And it was like what I heard you say, and I too loved how you came on like, oh, like this. And it's like a shortcut, almost like, you double click on your desktop. Like, I know where that is. My body and I can get there like that. So shortcut I like too.
Yeah. And also, the brain has synapses, right? So every time we do something new, we start a new pattern.
Mm.
But this old one is the strongest one. And then you start the new one and start the new one. The next thing you know, this one's stronger.
Mm.
Right? So that's mind management, right? If it's not something you need to keep processing over and over and over in your head, telling the story, outward over and over and over, because that's a story you keep telling yourself. It's a story you believe too. Then, you catch yourself. You're like, oh, okay, I got that from, when I was a kid. I remember that. And I have a therapist that I've worked with who very much was about, okay, well, and where do you think you learned that? Like, what a brilliant idea. Like, if we, and sometimes I don't know, but it's like, yeah, I get it. So we have to learn to, I think, mind manage ourselves to be able to make new choices, right? I used to be a very fear-based person. I'm glad I don't know that person anymore. But I really was. And I was dyslexic as a kid. It doesn't show up anymore for me, very rarely. But I do, as I've grown up, wondered, is it because my self-confidence was like this growing up? It really was. Yeah.
Oh, this conversation is so soothing. Like,
it is. I think you're so soothing, Chuck, and we just had that experience with you yesterday.
Yeah.
It's already taken me back. I've got that memory bank in there. And you gave us this exercise at the very end, this breathing and singing exercise. Can you tell our listeners how to do that?
Yeah.
Just so that they can know this little tool that they can take with them?
Absolutely. I studied this breath practice during COVID, and it's called the Butenko method. And I've kind of shifted it a little bit because he does this pinch your nose, hold your nose. And what happens is we have the ability to create nitric oxide and balance our carbon dioxide. So by breathing out more air than we breathe in, you balance your carbon dioxide. By creating a vibration in your nasal cavity, you create nitric oxide. So if you breathe in for 4 seconds and breathe out by humming through your nose, and then when you finish the humming, you breathe back in through your nose. So everything is nasal breathing when you do this practice. And what I love about the humming is you're also creating a vibration in your body. You want to also expand your diaphragm when you do this, because that's where our oxygen is supposed to go, and what helps keep our organs nourished. And if you are feeling out of sorts, I have this one client. She's an older woman and has had a lot of trauma as of recent, and she told me that this exercise is really helping her in between sound baths. She comes every month now. First, I told her do it 4 times a day, and then I said do it once an hour.
Yeah.
And she says it's really helping. And I know it really helps me. And you can, to me, I feel like if you keep this is just me, not something someone's taught me, but I feel like if you can keep your blood gas, if you can keep that going, right, throughout your day, not just like, oh boy, do I need it now. Like, it just helps keep us peaceful.
Even keeled, yeah.
Keep us present.
Also, there's something
as
about
you're learning.
The humming too. I grew up in a house of singers and hummers and whistlers, and I have a kid who's a whistler and a hummer, and another, like all my children are hummers and singers, probably because I walk around the house. I always have a tune in my head. But I've heard that when you have a tune in your head or you're humming or whistling, you don't have any other thoughts.
Right.
Oh.
You don't. That's great. Oh, I'm going to use that. Thank you. Yeah. Yeah, it is, right? Just like the sound, something to bypass the mind, something for the mind to focus on that's a little bit more healthy than the mental.
Yeah.
Mental
and
mind.
It's all a part of the ancient wisdom traditions, chanting.
Right.
Even in churches, singing before services and during services. I mean, it's all integrated into all of those traditions, and it makes sense. And it's so different than just being on our phones.
It really, yeah. And it feels good. And then, like, could you feel how it felt when everyone was doing it in the group?
Oh, it was so good.
Right?
So
it's just like, you just feel connected to everyone. And it's just this like, it's, to me, an experience of oneness, right?
Yes.
Where we're all like,
Yeah.
I love it.
It's kind of like oming at the end of your yoga practice, but it's not just a punctuation like I felt like in yoga class, like we're just going to do this at the end. What you're saying is like, this is part of the shortcut series that you're offering of like, here's how you can regulate, and just, a minute.
Just slow down. Yeah. A minute, 2 minutes.
And so technically it's 4 in and then just hum until you can't hum anymore, right?
Yeah. It's, I was taught 4 seconds in, 6 seconds out. Mm-hmm. Well, then I have to engage my brain, right? And then after the 6 seconds out, every couple times you pinch your nose and hold your nose for 5 seconds and then breathe in again. But I've heard other people teach about humming creates the nitric oxide. So I just put these two together and was like, oh, well, now we have vibration in our body too. I mean, it's like, yeah.
Beautiful.
I was just going to ask you one last thing. So when you gave that sound bath, you did it all intuitively, like what made the most sense coming next, right?
I have a little idea. Like, I know I love to start with my drum and my rattle and my flute, right? There's a setup there. And the flute especially, because the flute just really opens your heart. You can't not feel that flute in your body, right? And then I mix it up afterwards, the monochord after that, and then the gong, and then the bowls. And I have a framework because I have an hour of time. And your experience of, it felt like 20 minutes is very common response. What? I had one guy, when I did a private, a Mexican man that full of trauma, right? Arrested at the border, full of trauma. When I finished, he was like, "What? You played the gong?" I wasn't asleep, Chuck. I mean, I was here the whole time, but I wasn't really asleep, wasn't really awake. Did not hear 10 minutes of gong, right? right near, 6 feet from his body. To me, that's magic.
That's
Yeah.
Yep.
That's just magic. And he also woke up shifted. I think like really shifted. Yeah.
Well, I want to say that I've always been really impressed and amazed by your journey, and I have been a witness to it as we've been the production babes moving out into the wild woo. And I'm just honored and amazed and impressed by how you show up to it and the gifts that you're giving people. And thank you for giving us that gift yesterday. And thank you for the gifts that you give the world. And just the look on Sarah's face afterwards, like,
oh yeah,
it's so profound. And I just want to thank you.
Yeah, I definitely went on a journey. It was great.
Yay. Well, I want to hear about it. That's for sure. And I want to thank you, Jane, too, because I've told you the story before, but I'll remind you that when I first met Jane, we did a quick phone call. I showed up on her set as her assistant director, and within 10 minutes, you looked at me and you went, "Past life, I know it." And I was like, "Whoa!" Like, I looked at you and I was like, "Okay, yeah, I'm game, right?" Like, this is not the time or place to talk about it because, like, we have like work
45 setups to figure out. Yeah.
Yeah. But what you did in that moment, honestly, was just kind of wake me up again.
Oh.
Not that I was in a full slumber because, I had my own practices, but then, like you said, our friendship, and I would talk to you about my ideas and you'd be like, yep, just validating me the whole way. And so I just really appreciate you, and I love watching your journey now. And Sarah, I told you yesterday when I met you, I feel like I know you because I'm watching listening to all your podcasts, and I love them. And I think what you guys are doing is a service to the world to normalize mediuming and humaning, and it's a gift. So thank you.
Well,
for
thanks
including me.
for joining us today, and we want everybody to experience a sound bath.
Yeah,
right.
your brand of healing.
That's right.
Thanks. Yeah.
With that, we shall say farewell.
Okay.
Okay.
Bye, you guys.
Bye.
Thanks.
Medium Curious is made possible
by Jane Morgan editing,
Sarah Rathke made the amazing music,
and Gigi Hawkins podcast consulting.
Our logo was created by Eric Allen, mix by podcast engineers,
Kyle Hansen McKee photography,
and the dogs under the desk in Hawaii are Kalea and Domino,
and Trixie in California.